Hi, I'm Jeff Murr. I want to welcome you to Healthy Marriage Tips, where today we're going to be talking about what are trauma bonds attached to. I know this seems like a simple question, but it's actually quite fascinating. Trauma bonds are those attachments that you find that are formed during a trauma, and they can be formed to people, places, object, times, events, etc. These are some of the biggies, these five that I listed. You know, those of you who are old enough to remember Linus from Peanuts, he had this attachment to the blanket. I was always carrying around a blanket. And in a similar way, that's a great metaphor for trauma bonds. You have this attachment to something. It may not necessarily make sense at the time or no longer make sense, but you still are attached. Now, the bonds or attachments that are formed can be either of a positive or a negative nature. Now, if they're positive, that's when you hold on to it because it has positive associations or even a survival association. It brought you through that trauma, or you're depending on that person to get you through the trauma, and so you hold on to them, or you see it as hopeful. I guess like a teddy bear, or like Linus's blanket, would be positive bonding. And then there's the negative bonds. The negative bonds, these are destructive or hateful attachments. Now, these can show up in the form of obsessions. Now, I say that because, a lot of times it may not necessarily be a tangible object, maybe some, that part of them that's in your head where they're taking up space, and there's still the bonding that occurs. Although you can't always see the relationship, it's a very real force in your life. And it can lead to self-destructive patterns, self-destructive outbursts, stalking. Things such as this are outgrowths of some of the negative associations, where you dislike a particular person. Now, when you have a negative bond to somebody that is seen as positive in the community, that puts you in a real bind, because although you look at them as negative, everybody else looks at them as positive, and you feel torn and twisted. This puts you in a very awkward place. Places, some people have attachments to homes or various locations where things happened in their life. It can be objects. We talked about Linus and his blanket. It could be other objects as well. The whole idea of idols and totems go back to objects that people have bonded with under various circumstances. It could be particular times of the year, and so forth. Where you would see some of the anniversary reaction type of things that occur. You may have particular types of bonding associated with Christmas or the holidays. If the positive things, that's one thing. But, like for instance, if you want to go into a rage just because you see a Christmas tree, that's an example of some negative bonding. In particular events, one I see a lot of people having bonds with things like birthdays. Some people, we recently finished, last month we had Valentine's Day, now St. Patrick's Day. That hasn't been a big one for bonds showing up, but I'm sure that there are some people that have various bondings associated with it. I know the Super Bowl definitely has a lot of bond baggage with it. But, and I mention this because when you're trying to get past them, when you're dealing with the emotional reality of things, you're not dealing with something that's logical. And you may say, well, there's no logical reason why I have this bond. Well, that's because it's emotional. And emotions don't operate according to the same rules as logic. They have their own type of logic that they adhere to. So as you're going through your life looking for the various bonds, before you try to get rid of every bond, consider whether they're positive or negative, and what they're doing in your life. And if it's not something that's contributing to making your life better, then go ahead and take steps to rid yourself of them. But I wanted to go ahead and address this aspect of bonding so that you were aware of it. I hope that each of you have a great weekend, and we'll see you on Monday. Feel free to leave your comments, questions down below. I'll be glad to get to them. Till next time, goodbye.